Esoteric Dave asked me a question that's great. I'm going to address it in this video. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome. Let's read it first. And it's about how to read the material, how to manage the material and make it somehow interactive instead of just being these words that you read. Let's read what he asked, and then I'll step into the material. Okay, from Esoteric Dave. I love your name, Dave. That's cool. I do not have a metaphorical interpretation of this. He's commenting on a video that I put up about Lot willing to give up his 2 virgin daughters to the men of Sodom to do with as they please. And I'll just post a link to that video below. But he goes on to say, I grew up in a church for 25 years before I walked away from it. I don't consider myself a Christian, but your channel is one of the most interesting and informative channels I have ever come across regarding biblical interpretation. Thanks for that. Yeah, I'm into something weird here, though. I know yeah. Okay, so he says, but I do not really know how to interpret these kinds of passages from a metaphorical point of view. I probably need a lot more understanding and practice. Okay, yeah, let's talk about that a bit. I can focus on an area. Frankly, I go all over the place, and I need to. Somebody asked me once, boy, can you just kind of stay in one area? I can't quite follow along. And I was like, well, no, because I'm learning, and the only way I can learn is by going all over the place. There's parallels out there, and the only way you see them is by gathering up as much stuff as you can. If I stayed in one area, I can't learn it. There's something hidden in here that, yeah, it is super hard to find. Okay, but there's a procedure in understanding them. I'll start at the core, I guess. There's simple verse that is the easiest to figure out, that is not nested in big mythical stories and adventures or things like that. It's just very cut to the chase. You're going to find it in things like, if you wanted to pick one out, the Tao Te Ching from Lao Tzu. These are verses that were great to study and practice with. Every one of them is, great. Buddha's Dhammapada is another one. However, if you're familiar with the Bible, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount or Sermon on the Plain is going to be the same teaching as both of these two right here. Sermon on the Mount or Sermon on the Plain. The difference is the genre. These are well known as, I'm going on a spiritual seeking path. Master, what do I do? These become your guru. And you know you're supposed to go off and take that mystical verse and go do something with it. Naming is the origin of all particular things. What? Okay, so I take that and I have to go figure it out. Buddha's going to be the same thing. Now, Jesus is going to be telling it in a different genre. The teaching is still there. I've got another analogy. There's one big pot of food. Everybody needs to eat this food right here. And there's 3 servers, Lao Tzu, Buddha, and Jesus. And there's a line off of each one of them. You got the Christians, you got the Taoists, and you got the Buddhists all lined up. And they're all coming up and they're all getting served out of the same pot. But each one of them has to convert this serving into the language of the people that need to hear it. And of course, it's going to serve different purposes. The religious carrier has the capacity to be understood as something that is an outward, which is a carrying case. Many people will carry it. People will not walk around with Taoism or Buddhism worshiping it. They won't. It's a path to follow. People will carry this and worship it without following the path. This will gain incredible dissemination over those. But you have to know that there's something in here that is from that same pot. The consumption. Where do humans come from? And you know what the carrying case is. Okay, the difficult thing is, can you approach the Bible that way? I can read through all of these with the same attachment to them. The same attachment as a scholar as its material. There was a time, however, when I hated the Bible and what it stood for because of things in my childhood and because of where I came from. It's taken me a long time to get out of that. So I know there's some people that are so against the Bible. I'm not a Christian at all, but I've had militant atheists really cut me to shreds for using the Bible. It's a difficult one. I've had it from Christians as well, using the Bible for that. It's a tough one. I would almost recommend the Bible if you're very familiar with the material, because most of that stuff we're close to having it memorized anyway and those sort of things. So it's something that we can play with in our minds a lot more. There is also, in the short verse, it's just a basic core teaching. You are a product of this. This is how you heal. When you get into the big story, they're doing the exact same thing. They're following that same pattern. Only now they're creating a mental hierarchy, the higher self, the consciousness, the inner self that you're creating as a result of what you're storing inside, all of the stuff that is stored, the energy of those, the odd against your brother, the way you flow in life, all of that becomes factors in the big stories that make it more complicated. But when you get through those, it gives you details on what to do to heal. These ones will say things like, you must be poor in spirit. Yes, you must, but it doesn't tell you how. It kind of gives you hints along the way. You have to interpret it. We do it honestly by forgiving our inner self, but it doesn't say what to do it. There's a process where we're using our higher awareness and intermingling in our consciousness with our memories and becoming accustomed to the painful things. There are things that are held in the big stories that are hard to unwrap, that are not contained in the small verse. But if it's unfamiliar of a read to you, I would recommend learning the small verse first, because it's almost like learning a language. You have to start training your brain how to manage the verse, how to take it from an outward something that sounds outward and place it inward. Naming is the origin of all particular things. I look at that and go, wow, that's crazy. Everything existed way before me. Oh, me. This is me. Ah, okay. Naming is the origin of all particular things for me in my life. I've judged it, and now I'm going to be judged according to it. I'm going to get my karma, my measure you meet. All of it just starts unfolding at some point, and you go, okay, it's all about me. This plays out in my mind. Naming is the origin of all particular things for me. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. That should be mentally interactive at some point. We have to work those through to caught in desire. They're analogs. It's not real desire. It's a psychological process. Caught in hanging on to something that you can't let go of. You see only the manifestations of it over and over again. We've got our cyclical pain element right there that is hard to see. That's why you look at a lot of different things for the comparisons. That's equal to the boulder being rolled up, or the pain in childbirth, or liver getting eaten out, plagues, all of those. Harpies defiling Phineas's food. Yeah, all of those are cyclical pain elements on this story. But we will find them in here too, right off in Buddha's, the very first verse. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It's founded on our thoughts. It's made up of our thoughts. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. So our cyclical pain right off the bat, that if you've had something bad happen to you at some point in time, it's not that you have to translate these. It's not an evil thought. It's something that is evil to your existence. It's not you thinking evil. It may have been. It's something that is residing in you now that is creating evil in your life, and it's upsetting your calm. All right, would you recognize Jesus's version of the same thing? Judge not, lest you be judged. For the judgment with which you meet unto others, you'll be judged in a likewise manner. Something to that effect. Sorry, I butchered that one. But you know what I'm talking about on that one. So what happens when you're judging something? You're naming it, you're qualifying it, you're classifying it. You've judged something, and now you're going to get judged in return for the same thing. You see it's the same teaching. If you work it all the way to the mental level, understanding that those are analogous ways of carrying the same core teaching. So I think what I would do then perhaps is to, I would look at that, pick one, and understand that every verse is meant for you. If you went to the Sermon on the Mount, the Sermon on the Plain, first one in both of them says, blessed are the poor. But which one? Matthew goes on to say, blessed are the poor in spirit, while Luke just says, blessed are the poor. I might have those inverted. But you might read one of them and go, what? Blessed are the poor. How is that? When you know that every one of them is a guru teaching verse, that it plays out in your psyche, you don't have to be told anything else. That goes in your mind right there. You need to be devoid of poor, pure, devoid of, we see our Buddha Jesus correlations, the karma, the measure you meet unto others will be likewise meted unto you. Everybody sees those. But also the seek emptiness. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Those those need to be understood as being the exact same thing in different languages. So you have to manipulate them with your mind and your own thought process until you make it yours, until you are now living that verse. It's not just something academic, or it's a living, yeah. I was going to say living verse term, but I think I don't know if I should use that term here. All of them are verses about inner healing, about the inner path, how you came about, and turning inward. And when I use that term, turning inward, that just means into your memories, into your mind. Okay, I think that what might be important, I've never done this before, but I'm sitting here, I've been pondering your question, and I realize that there is something that has happened in my mind over the years that I never worked at it. It just gradually happened. However, now that I see it's in place, I see it's the right thing. And it can be, if we understand it, you can get into it faster than trying to pick your way through it. Okay, let's talk about the hierarchy. That's it. As we read through the big stories in that hierarchy, all of the characters shift in and out of those 5 places right there. That's why it's important to understand this hierarchy if you're going to read the big story, the monomyth, the creation myths. Okay, first of all, the higher self. We've identified that before. Let's do it again. My favorite one, because I think most of us experience this, when you got a lot of problems in your mind, life goes on. There's a point in time, 3, 4 in the morning. There's some sort of a natural mechanism in humans that you wake up tossing, turning, frazzled. These thoughts are going through your head. You can't get out of that. However, every once in a while, there's a part of you that you notice step in that's telling you, hey, there's nothing you can do. Relax. That part doesn't even feel it. When you're experiencing that in your conscious mind, it's like, wow, I don't even feel it here. But what happens? We slip right back into the feeling. That is the higher awareness. However, from that, many things emerge. That it's not just a higher awareness. This is like heaven, where all of the bad gods live and everything else too. So it's not just your place to exist. You're the primo god. It's not just your place to exist in the higher awareness, but it's the other things that are creating bad for you in life are also going to be coming from there. Why? They have creative power. You know, if I got molested, and as a result I have a memory that is shame, that shame, the power for all of that energy came from this higher place out here. I get the power from there. We'll just let that one go for now. As we get into the stories, if there are different gods, and in Abrahamic material there isn't, but there is sons of gods. There are other malevolent things in the background going on that take the place of something from a higher realm that is causing you problems. You're down here living on earth going, I don't like this. That just represents the idea that we're living unaware of the higher self, and we're not living from the higher self. We're living on the earth. We're living through our physical life experiences. Okay, so that higher self is very identified, but it's bigger than just your higher awareness. We can also, at any point in time throughout the day, you could sit and focus on this. You could stop for a moment and step outside of this frazzled mental state and look at yourself, and you know what to do, but you're just stuck and you're not sure what to do. You know what needs to be done, but you don't know how to do it. You know you don't feel good. From this perspective out here, where you don't feel the emotions from that right there, that's what we need to nurture. That's the higher awareness. We don't know that. We don't give it attention. We live through our experiences. We're trying to shift from living through the experiences to living through the higher awareness. And you know what? I want to rephrase that or explain it better. We originally start out in life living from the higher awareness, except we do not have the conscious cognition to know that. As we develop and learn, we begin to live through what our memories are, and we lose touch with this. That's why the little mind reading things, the little psychic moments and the deja vu that happen as kids slowly fades away. We're leaving this openness behind. It's still there. It's a part of us. We are now, however, living through life experiences. Then what happens when we begin to try to live through, recognize the higher awareness? You can't just live there and leave the experiences in place. You'll keep getting roped into it. The higher awareness is being employed to help you understand that these are just physical experiences that you need to rise above, that there's a better place to be if you can get out of these experiences here. So that's important to say right there, that that the higher awareness is something that we naturally would live through, except that that would be living with a cleared eye, the mote out of the eye. The judgments and all of the things that are bad for us are out of the way. We've cleared them out. We're no longer filtering through those in life. As we get rid of that stuff, we naturally return to a state of living from the higher awareness. Bearing in mind, we do have to also include sometimes new lifestyle changes to replace old ones. We don't just drop old stuff and then do nothing. We often, as humans, need to make sure we're doing something positive instead of trying to leave the negative behind and then sitting and doing nothing else instead. We need to move on in activity. Okay, the next one is the conscious. This is incredibly important. In all of the stories, whoever the called hero is, or whoever the prophet is, whoever the son of the prophet is that died off is your consciousness, is your conscious awareness. From the consciousness, we're doing this right here. We're interfacing with the world. We're making judgment calls. We're deciding whether we like the sound of that or not. We are remembering things. We've put them away. There's other times where things happen and our conscious made a judgment call, and they're all getting stored away. And then later on, when you're not around anyone, but you recall those, you feel them viscerally in your consciousness. All of our life experiences happen in our conscious awareness, and typically through emotion. What we can do then is we can say, okay, I see that higher self and I see the consciousness. The higher awareness is something out here that's kind of above myself, and my consciousness is residing just below it going, yeah, I'm not sure what to do. I'm just living life here. That's exactly what happens. When we want to turn inward, what we're going to do next is look at the inner self. I want to bring in an example. I pop stuff in from everywhere. This is from the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna and Krishna are getting ready to go, and Krishna lets Arjuna know. Arjuna is going back to do battle with his family to get his land back, representing the idea that you're going back in to reclaim your mind, your peace, your sanity. You have to go defeat the enemy, or your old family, actually. They're parts of you that need to be gone. And Krishna tells him, I can be your advisor only. I cannot do the work. The consciousness has to do the work, but we have to employ the higher awareness. Everything mixes and blends in the awareness. You're going to feel that at the conscious level. Before I move on, that male, female, it doesn't matter who you are. The consciousness is the male called on the journey. Your consciousness is too. And that's just the way the stories are written. But everybody pay attention. The inner being is the female. So guys, your inner being is the wife, or the whore at some time, or whatever the case may be. We'll just have to get into the stories and see shifting. It gets pretty deep. That's probably something that's more evident in Greek material, as like in the Argonautica, or as the voyage of the Argo, rather, as they're trying to get underway. Before they get very far along, they have to leave the island where their wives, or depending on which version you read, there's several ones. There's an island of women that they have to leave behind. If you don't understand that those women represent the parts of your inner being that need to be left behind, and that the Argonauts and Jason are the qualities that you have that's going to go take care of your earlier self and defeat all the crap that you're dragging with you. If you can't make that mental hierarchical step that looks patriarchal, you're not going to understand the material. It's nobody's fault. It's what they did. So consciousness, you're the man. Subconscious, you're the woman. Period. You want to understand it? That's the way it has to work. But, okay, so this massive memories is what we're living through. What this female is really what Eckhart Tolle would call, the pain body. What Jung would call, the dark, the shadow self. Yeah, that's it. What Jesus would call it is the mote in your eye. It's the massive memories that we're living through, and that is called Eve. And Eve, what? Eve has no choice. Eve is a product of our decisions, of our emotional choices. Eve becomes a product of the way we consciously live life. Eve is responsive to male, because Eve is a product of the way we process information. Other things too. There's stuff we're born with. There's qualities and characteristics we have. But I'm suggesting from the healing path, We're trying to heal from memories and hurt thinking. So the consciousness, as you're reading through these stories, is going to be the male. Abram, I am Abram, my consciousness. My inner being is Sarai. I see Abram and Sarai. And then I go to Pharaoh. What does Pharaoh represent? Is Pharaoh a part of me? Pharaoh is. Pharaoh represents my life experience in the same way the serpent represented in the Garden of Eden. Now Pharaoh is representing this idea that I'm leaving my famine behind. That was me. My conscious and my subconscious self, devoid and empty of things, needed to go experience life. So now I go off. It's just the way the story is. It didn't really happen. It represents the idea that we are now going off and having life. Our inner being gets corrupted from the life experiences from Pharaoh. We pick up things as a result, called slaves and animals, and then we're kicked out of that place, which means we're moving on to another iteration. So all of the, and then as we become Abraham and Sarah, that is us still, except now the conscious and the subconscious are at a different iteration. We have gone through a process, and now we're here. This dies off eventually, and we become Isaac and Rebekah. That is always going to be the case, that the consciousness is the male, and the wife, if there is one, is the female. And then there's offspring as a result, and those offspring act out. Divisions, we divide, Cain and Abel. Alrighty, the next part would be, and when we're sitting there in quietude, trying to be peaceful, all of that turmoil that we've stored away is going to be trying to emerge. It's going to make your head spin and swirl, and you can't settle down. You can't just sit and go, I feel good for 3 seconds. I hate this. Your mind, you can't slow it down. We have to get away from things and find some peace and look at some stuff if we want our life to change. But when all of that is coming from the female, that's the female sinning. Or when you get triggered and you act out, that is the female acting out. But where did that come from? That's actually the consciousness that is having the experience that is doing it, but it's being fed from a memory instead of the life experience. The conscious doesn't know. It's just like, I still feel this. In fact, as time goes on, it's gotten worse and worse than when it first happened. I hate it now more than ever. So we have this accumulation of angst and mental turmoil in our minds that becomes that moat that we're living through. And then there is the glory of God, the graces, nirvana, the kingdom of heaven within, the happiness. There is the flow of life that is a result of the manner in which we hold things up here. So we're born, we have a higher awareness, and no consciousness. As we become conscious, we become Adam and Eve. We now are aware of ourselves. We have named things. That's not us literally naming things. That's us naming our life experiences. Then Eve emerging from us means, we've hit that point where we're now self-aware. We're not just little infants that we can't even remember. We're now kids that are playing and having fun and goofing around. We have an awareness of self. But as you continue reading on right here, it's even telling us things like the female will, you will serve your husband. And that's developing the hierarchy. We don't have to do that in real life. The Bible, it sounds that way, and I'm sure back then that you better live that way anyway. But perfectly it works in the transition into the psyche, if we call the inner being the female and the consciousness the male, that the subconscious is subservient to the male. We are the ones that create Eve through our decision-making process, how we remember and how we store the emotional state of that memory. That accumulation is Eve. I continually say that wrong. That is a part of Eve. That's a bad part of us. Eve is also all the good stuff. It's our entire inner being. Not all of it is bad. Some of it is, Grandma, that's good pie. And then, anyway, so here we are. So what do we do then? The flow of life, yes, there's, that's another one. The graces of God. You live in nirvana. There's just peace. There's the kingdom of heaven within. These are states of being, but the state of being provides you with a good flow in life. If your mind is in frazzled state and confused all the time, you're going to continue to have that experience in life. When you can extract yourself from that, you will cease to have that kind of experience. These are the flows in life that are changing based on the nature of how we're holding the memories and how they act out and how they seem to be acting in a bigger realm. There's something bigger than it seems like it. I don't want to get woo here. Think of that on your own. We can do that sometime. Obvious to me there is. My life experiences have changed in my life from one of, kind of poverty and not having much opportunity to having a good life. My life changed because of changing experiences and memories, or forgiving things along the way. So these are things you look at and go, all right, but you can see it works, but they're demonstrable, but they're not necessarily evident. You have to look at it and go, yes, I see that would work for me. I can tell you that it worked for me, but it's not like painting a fence. Oh, I see that happening right there. You have to look at it and go, oh, let me see. Am I going to do that or not? At some point it's up to you to do something with it. That's the nature of this material. That's why the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. That's what we're doing right here, right now. We're telling the Tao. It's not eternal because it doesn't help anybody. You have to take the path before it does it. I'm all over the place. See how I get. All right. So we had the higher awareness. Let's do this. Try a drill. Let's try to make something up. Sit and think about this and turn into your mind. Maybe close your eyes and your consciousness, and you look at a past memory. Call it something. Call it Eve. I don't care if you're male or female, you're Adam right now in your consciousness. Look at yourself and say, Eve, what do you got in there? What's that first sin? What is it that hurts you? Then stop for a minute. Become your inner being. Become the memory. Go back to that time. Look out and tell yourself, I got raped. I got molested. I. Whatever it is for you. It's what hurts us that what we must resolve. We don't worry about the things that don't hurt us. What hurts you? Become that. That's Eve right there telling you, this was my first sin. This is what happened to me. And now my peace is gone and your peace is gone because of it. We're both kicked out of the Garden of Eden, but I'm at your service. And every time this acts out, it's going to be painful. I'm going to give pain in childbirth, and you're going to go out and live life stuck living life experiences until you're ready to turn inward. Eve maybe doesn't know all that stuff. Put yourself in each one of these positions as you're doing this, and then look at the offspring. Oh, this is what happened as a result. I hate. Boom, there's the bad kid. Hey man, it's got to be all right. You got to learn to let it go. There's the good kid. We have this internal battle back and forth. Ultimately, when you think about it, what it is the perception of the way that we're holding the memory. Something bad happened. I don't like it. I'm ashamed. I hurt. I hate. Something that is derogatory. That right there is the problem. Right there. All the story and all the fun stuff aside, that's the issue right there. But the stories are written in such a way to contain that teaching in a hierarchy. And because of the way our experiences, we live life a certain way. We have hurt when we don't have these things resolved. And so then what happens is now you employ the higher awareness to come in and go, hey, I see you two. You guys remember me? No, you don't. I existed before you were. Before you were conscious, I was there. Now you're learning enough to find me again. I'm here and I've been here all the time. And you go, oh, the consciousness hears this. I like that. The higher awareness says it's time to heal. And what happens is that we're going to start emerging the stuff that hurts. And when we do that, it's going to become very painful. It's the stuff we want to put away. We've become so used to not looking at it, we don't want to see it. What we're going to do, though, is we have to acclimate to it. We do that. Look at life. Stuff that used to shock the hell out of us. Now you look at it and go, that happens every day. We get used to things by looking at them, by seeing them. That's the first step we have to do here to healing. We have to look at the things. And you know what? I'm not a medical professional. Let me caveat this. If you're suicidal, don't listen to me. Please. This is a very tough thing to do. looking at this might require help. But if you can do it on your own, then what you do is you bring that memory up of what happened and you begin looking at it. But instead of looking at it instead of living through the victim, you stop and you watch that and you look at it as the higher awareness. You see it from a different perspective. That's the first step you have to make. It may not feel good and you may not want to look at it for very long, but you have to start. And gradually you keep doing that and doing that and doing that and doing that until you can start stepping outside of it and seeing something different. And then it'll be easier for you to what you're doing there is breaking down barriers, gradually breaking down our own barriers when we're doing that. When we don't look at it, and the more we hate it, the bigger the barrier becomes. It becomes a product of the way we think about it. So if we want it to go away, the only way to do that is to think about it in a different way. We have to change the way we view that event. And again, it doesn't mean we have to like it or love it, but we have to stop hating it. We have to understand something bigger than ourselves if we want to stop living through our memories. It's just that simple. You can sit there and say, but this happened. Well, then see ya. All right. When you're ready, you got to figure out something. You got to make the forgiveness. If you don't, you're dragging it with you. It's stored that way. Draw it up in your memory. Think about it. How does it feel? That's the way it lives right there. That's the way you have it living. You have to change that feeling right there. All right. I really went off onto that, but that's the healing process when you break it all down. Anyway, go back to that idea, though, of playing it out in your mind. Now this higher awareness knows all of that stuff, and it's stepping in and it's telling your conscious, and you're going, okay, I got to fight this stuff. Your subconscious is going, it's feeding it out. As it gets closer, your conscious is co-feeling this. I have to get rid of it. And also the angst that is arising from it coming to the surface. And there's this fight and this struggle to leave the past behind. These are the females that you have to leave behind. in certain stories. Okay, so there's going to be a struggle to leave the past in many stories. The struggle is telling somebody something that happened that I'm so ashamed of that I don't want to tell anybody. And as I get close to doing it, I shy away. I get close to it, I shy away. Or I've got a habit, drugs, alcohol, something, relationship, something somewhere that I need to get away from, but I'm so hooked into it, I keep failing. You have to leave the past behind to move on. So that's also written into the story. You're not going to... When my life changed, I don't live in the place where I came from anymore. You move. You go somewhere else. That's just what happens. If you don't change, you kind of stay where you are. Anyway, yeah, okay, so practice that in your mind. Then your conscious and your memories are kind of commingling. You see this happening up here, and you keep trying to play with, okay, these are the memories I see. If I pull them close, I don't like them. Let them, okay, ooh, I see that. You're doing mind experiment stuff. Then you step up here into the higher awareness and look at your conscious doing it. Start taking on all these roles as an awareness. Sometimes, like in Gospel of Mary or something like that, those stories are told from the perspective of the inner being. Anyone's inner being. The Gospel of Mary is told from somebody saying, here is what, if this teaching was told from the inner self, this is what it would sound like. So it's a different perspective. Okay, that's just, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to show what I've done without necessarily always understanding what has gradually transpired over the years. And in this case, yeah, that I mean, as I'm reading the stories, I'm reading the Abram and Sarai right off the bat. I'm reading it with the idea that, oh, this is me. There's my outer and my inner self. We're starting in a place of famine, which is where we're supposed to. We've got nothing, and God has abandoned us. Doesn't help us. Why? Because we grow up at that age and go off on our own, don't we? We go off and live life. So we did. We went to Pharaoh and we gave up our inner self to life experience. And as a result, we accumulated slaves and animals and we're sent on our way. So we've gone through a step of early life. Then we're going to start going through Abraham and Sarah, and then Isaac and Rebecca as continual iterations of that conscious and subconscious. They always, one shifts out, the next shifts in. One shifts out, the next shifts in. Different things are happening at different times. Boy, you know, if ever there's a time to use the term theater of the mind, this is it. These are playing out in a world where we don't read, we don't write. There's no books. We have these memorized. We're off on our own. We're remote. There is so much in these stories that it's mind-boggling. But they're all about, how do you heal yourself? How do you find the inward path? How do you find the God inside? Meanwhile, people don't want to do that. Not many are going to do it. And personally, I'm convinced that that's the metaphorical ark story right there. That there wasn't a real golden ark that was there, that the material, the teaching, the stories themselves are the arks that hold the inner pathway. And that many people will carry it, but very few can look inside. And you know what? That's what we're doing, looking inside. Yeah, it's not all hidden. All of this is available. You grab something up like this and go, boy, I don't understand it. You turn it inward, make it yours, and go, okay, I got it, after you work it through. You do the same thing with this and you go, whew, you know what? I got the same thing. Interesting. I got something to mark here. What do I have? Verse 52. See, this is way into it. What is the very first verse? The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Mysterious verse. Well, all the way back to 52. They're kind of repeating. In the beginning was the Tao. All things issue from it. All things return to it. That's the higher awareness, and there's a realm out there. All things come from it, and all things go back to it. Plus, we do. All things come from it. All things go back to it. We come from the universe. We're going back to, I don't know. To find the origins, trace back the manifestations. You're looking for your origin. You want to trace back the manifestations, the experiences of your life. When you recognize the children, the offspring of your life experiences, you will find the mother. That is your inner being, and you will be free of sorrow. It's all in here in ways that are so beautifully cryptic. We've lost touch with it. But I think that it's there, but it takes a long time because your brain has to see it. It's something you can't just point out. People have to go, yeah, I see something there and I want to know what that is. That's how I figured it out. It was just like obsessive for certain reasons for me in life to understand that. And, whether I have it all or not, or whether I'm right or not, it's theory. I get more people say no than not, but I believe it's right because when you can start finding consistency between all of the different teachers from antiquity and you find a common core, you go, yeah, this is probably it. This is probably it. It's about me. It's about my life. It's about healing and letting go and arising above my humble beginnings and living through that higher awareness again that was there in the beginning. But I had to go out and get life experiences before I could learn enough to understand that and then get back to it and drop those life experiences that, well, that's what they were. That's where I came from. How do I resolve these things? How do I see them in ways that I get above them, that they no longer hold me down? I've got this thing that I've done quite a bit. I haven't recently, I've talked about it before, but that is using your higher awareness and looking at like planet Earth from outer space, looking at it from a distance. You have to close your eyes. It's happening in your imagination. We have to know that. But you look down there and you start seeing what's happening and you see life emerging and you see the way things are and you realize that you're born right in the middle of that. That you had no choice, neither did anybody else. You're looking for ways to view your position down there to become bigger than what you are so that you're not living through that little person down there and their experiences, but that you learn to live from a higher place, not attached to that. That does sound kind of crazy. That might be over the top verbiage, but it really means that you're living life not attached to all the things that have happened. You cease living through your memories and you're looking ahead with a clean slate. Or, no, you got memories, but they're resolved. They don't hurt you anymore. You know what? I need to sum up here. I'm kind of trying to figure this out as I go too. I do know that I've never mentioned that. I don't think I've ever. I always tell people you become the character, and they're different iterations. But I've never used that verbiage before. That each time you're shifting a male and a female out of the picture, and a new one is coming in, that's shifting into your conscious and your subconscious. You're that next iteration. So that might help it get across a little bit better of what I'm doing in my mind as I go through them and read them. and that all of the other things that are happening out there, I have to somehow process that as something that's happening up here that is holding an experience that's generally going to be a simple experience. Big stories. Big stories. Our media, we don't read, we don't write. We live long lives. We're intelligent. Yeah, we're not just sitting around watching the grass grow. We're doing this right here. And wise people are doing this. Look at what we do in media today. How many people are behind that? Just imagine behind the scenes here. There'd be a lot of people if that template is indeed framing everything. It's for each person to see. So I hope that helps. So I think that learning how to interpret the short verse so that it becomes something that is mentally interactive for you. Blessed is the poor in spirit, for yours is the kingdom of God. When you can understand that to the point in your mind, it means when I am devoid of all the things that I have accumulated in life, I am going to have a good life experience. When you can get to that point with the verse, all the short verse, the bigger verse starts bringing in the hierarchical information, more pieces, more parts. They become bigger stories than a basic core teaching. Perfect example of that is Buddha, the one I've talked about, the wheel. If you've had an evil thought, pain follows, like the wheel follows the ox that draws the carriage. And I'm the ox that draws the carriage. Pain is following me because of something I'm bringing with me. When we get to Exodus, we've got 10 plagues. That's a big story. That's not just a wheel with pain. That's 10 times pain, but they're showing cyclical pain that gets left behind. So that's what I mean when it jumps from something very small and easy to see to something that's like, whoa, they blew that up huge, but it's still the same part. You know what though? There's a lot of incredible detail in each one of those steps though. It's not just a plague piece. There's a lot of detail within each one of them. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Anyway, okay, I hope that helps. I know this video got kind of long, and some of it is, I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't quite have it concise, but I'm looking at this and realizing, yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's how it's working. And if you want to apply it, I think, like I said, the short verse, if you can make that transition, then all you're doing when you go to the big verse is realizing now they're designating the hierarchy sliced up over time and various parts. And that bad thing right there suddenly became, all kinds of bad things. Battles and giants and whatever across the board, and all it is holding the idea that that's the same seed. That's a seed that grows a thistle. Yeah, the stories get big. The template is always just this inner path. You can take it and build on anything you want off it. But Star Wars was built off of it. Big picture. Step back. Okay, we need to have a calling. King Arthur was called as the only one. I mean, he was the only one that could extract Excalibur. So he meets the criteria of the calling. Special person up front. What happens next? We need supernatural aid. Oh, he's got Merlin for supernatural power. He collects up the resources he needs along the way. His, like the Argonauts would be for Jason getting ready to sail. He gets his knights, the Knights of the Round Table, all hand selected. And what are they doing? They're going off to seek the Holy Grail. We go to Jesus and say, oh, Jesus was isolated out. He's the only Son of God, and he's got supernatural powers by default. He's going to hand select his disciples, and he's going to seek the kingdom of heaven within. One of them is an adventure genre. One of them is a religious genre. But you can see the template pieces if you see that they are conceptual, not literal, that they're holding something different. We're seeking inner peace, whether that's the kingdom of heaven within or the Holy Grail or Nirvana. All right. Hope this was helpful. Questions, comments? I'd appreciate it. All right. See you in the next video.